welcome into another giant overreaction. Technically the first giant overreaction of the 2024 season, man. Definitely glad to be here. I'll be your host, Authentic. Big shout out to the gang in the building one time, man. I see y'all here bright and early. Shout out to everybody that pulled up on the last stream. That was our most successful stream we have had to date on this channel, man. Cannot thank y'all enough. That thing is hitting up around like 10,000 views. So big salute to y'all. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of New York Giants stuff here. We're going to be talking about Joe Schoen and some of the reactions from the Hard Knock episode 1. Don't forget we got episode 2 tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I also want to talk about Saquon Barkley. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that topic. Some people want to shy away from some of the players that aren't on our team anymore, but I do think there were some revealing conversations had on that Hard Knocks episode 1. Y'all know we're going to talk about Daniel Jones. Authentic always talks about the quarterback. That's just how it is. And I also want to talk a little bit about John Mara and his involvement in the decision-making process in the front office and how much leeway he has or how much he doesn't have. How much is he given to Joe Schoen? Is this Joe Schoen's ship? Is he the captain now? We're going to talk a lot about all of that, man. But again, big shout out to all of y'all for pulling up, rocking out with me today. For those of y'all that follow Talking Giants over here on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all that stuff, they did give me the pleasure of being a featured guest on their show. They had 15 content creators go live for 15 minutes, I believe it was, on their channel. I was lucky enough to be one of them. Great episode. Loved it. Big shout out to Bobby for reaching out to me and having me on. Definitely go check that out when you're done checking this one out. But let's get to it, man. We're going to be talking about Hard Knocks. Don't forget, Hard Knocks episode 2 tomorrow night, HBO, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need the plug, I might go live before that show pops off and whatnot, and kind of divvy out, give y'all some links and whatnot so y'all can be headed in the right direction. Also, don't forget, training camp is coming up here July 24th through August 6th. 11 practices, free and open to the public. Admission is free, like I just said there. Also, Giant season ticket members are going to have access to the tickets early. So if you are someone who has season tickets to the Giants games at MetLife, the tickets for training camp will be released tomorrow at 2 p.m. So definitely keep your eyes on that. I'm not a season ticket holder, so I'm going to have to wait until Thursday at 2 p.m., July 11th, to get my tickets. I'm trying to get as many tickets as I can, so if you are a season ticket holder and you're not going, reach out to me on Twitter. Y'all know I'm going to be working on a documentary. Tickets will be available at giants.com/training camp, so make sure y'all check that out. I already got my ticket to Eagles training camp. They only have 1 day reserved for Eagles training camp, which is August 1st. I got a couple of tickets for Commanders camp as well on August 6th. I'm looking for more tickets to get over there as well. And then, like I said, Giants training camp, July 24th to August 6th. All of those practices are going to be held at 10 a.m. in the morning. They do say that those times could be scheduled to some change, but more than likely they will be at 10 a.m. Looking forward to seeing some fans out there and getting some good interviews. Y'all know that this documentary that I've been working on is going to be from a fan perspective. And, the first episode that I want to work on, shout out to Chris Peace, man, who sent me 2 tickets to the Patriots Commanders preseason game, which I'm going to get to see 3 of the quarterbacks that were in this draft class, because my first episode that we're going to be doing in the documentary is going to be focused on the quarterback and the transition from, hope that the Giants were going to go out there and draft a quarterback here in the 2024 draft. Although we didn't, I will be focused on that. I will get to see Drake May live and also get to see Jaden Daniels and Joe Milton. I know a lot of people aren't big fans of Joe Milton's, but that's going to be a good one to go check out. So big shout out to Chris Peace, who blessed me with that for my birthday that just passed here on the 5th. Just turned 41. So big shout out to Chris Peace, and shout out to my other homie who blessed me with some tickets to the Commanders training camp as well. And for those of y'all that aren't familiar with the documentary that I'm working on, let me go ahead and just preview the trailer for the documentary that we released just a couple of weeks back. Check this out one time. 6 quarterbacks went in the first 12 picks, and the Giants didn't draft one. Ain't that a bitch? Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I keep asking myself, when are we going to get back to competing? How the did we even get here?
You better watch your mouth.
Starting route to MetLife Stadium.
Well, the 2024 season is around the corner, so I'm gassing up the whip, taking my camera and hitting the road all season to bring you the most original, whatever you want to call this that we do on YouTube. We'll talk to all the fans, and we'll do it in real time. an in-season documentary on my New York Giants and the rest of you bitches in the NFC East. Yeah, you.
I'm the fattest motherfucker, the planet 10. Tell your bitch she can keep on looking. I'm cold motherfucker, got game for your hoes. I ain't scared if your man start tripping. I said, where my bitch, where my bitch, where.
So big shout out to y'all, man. Y'all know what it is. The documentary in season, going to cover the team and whatnot. Should be fun. For those of y'all that don't know, I'm an aspiring filmmaker. Coming from the audio side of things, I've done a bunch of audio and film already and trying to transition into, being a director and whatnot. And I figured this would be the best way to do it, cover my favorite team that I've been a lifelong fan of. So definitely keep your eyes peeled. We're going to be releasing all those episodes here throughout the season here on Authentic and the Beard. And I see it's a lot of new people in the building. We do 4 shows a week covering the NFC East, which is going to be a great time, especially with Saquon Barkley going over there to the Philadelphia Eagles. This is going to be a great year to cover our team. You also got Bobby Johnson going to Washington to be the offensive line coach and whatnot. So it's going to be definitely an interesting season. We've been here for 5 years already, and I think this is probably going to be the most interesting season outside of 2019, where we drafted our quarterback. But big shout out to everybody in the building, man. I see y'all, man. I see y'all all in the chat. My homie Sebastian is in the building. I see you, fam. What's going on? I see Michael Knight is in the building one time. The Beard is in the building one time. What's going on, fam? John is in the building. The homie D Brown is in the building. What's going on, D? Hope all is well. Manny is in the building. NYC, my homie 1T is in the building, dog. Hey, 1T no ball. That's one thing for sure, man. And Sigma Surge is in the building, yo. Big shout out to the gang, man. Y'all, most of my day ones in here, but I do see a lot of other people kind of lurking, watching the show. So shout out to all the new viewership and whatnot, man. Y'all know we're going to be doing these every Monday until the season starts. So let's get right into it, man. So for those of y'all that aren't familiar, the way the Giant Overreaction show works is we take clips or we take tweets or whatever you want to call them now that it's X and whatnot, content from different places across the internet. And we put the statements on the screen similar to how you see this banner at the bottom here. And in the chat, we will decide if the statement on the screen is an overreaction or not. Now, to represent that you think it is an overreaction, if you think the statement that the person is saying on the screen is an overreaction, you can spam an O in the chat for overreaction. If you think it's not an overreaction and you agree with the statement on the screen, you can put a U in the chat, which will represent you're going to be taking the under on the overreaction. If indeed you need a little bit more time to kind of get your wits together, maybe you need a few more weeks and, a little bit more data out there to get your thoughts together on this one, you can put a P in the chat and you can push a little P for the push to represent that you need a little bit more time. That's how it works over here. Big shout out to my homie Momo one time in the building. What's going on, Momo? Hope all is well, man. I see Friar's in the building too. What's going on, Friar? But those are the rules. I figured normally I kind of speak on a bunch of topics on these shows, but I figured I got 4 giant overreactions here, and I think that these are such good overreactions that there should be a bit of long-winded conversation in between. Feel free to chime in and tell me why you think it's an overreaction or why you're taking the under, how you agree with the statement or how you don't agree with the statement on the screen and whatnot. And I kind of want to start this one off with a bang. Some people might not like this, like I talked about earlier, but let's get right off into the first giant overreaction. All right, so this one really, had me just a bit heated, to be honest, because I think people have a skewed lens perspective on players versus what happens in the front office with the organization. And I think that this Saquon Barkley situation is the perfect one to talk about. A lot of people like to dismiss a lot of different statistics when it comes to certain positions. But this one on the screen I thought was extremely puzzling. It comes from @NY_Madcat. He says, look, we all know he was the wrong pick at number 2, and the Giants tried to make the best of it. Saquon had a great rookie year, which got us nothing. The rest of his tenure here got us, wait for it, nothing. I feel the same way about Odell. Good optics with garbage results. So y'all let me know if y'all think that this is an overreaction by representing it with an O in the chat, or if you think that you're going to take the under on this one and you agree with the statement on the screen. And I already see the Beard chiming in early. He says, horrible take here. I kind of felt the same way. So Saquon, kind of dealt with the whole deal situation with the New York Giants. They franchise tagged him. They gave him a deal that was equivalent to the franchise tag after the 2022 season. He played the 2023 season, a bunch of injuries up front, injuries to the quarterback position. Saquon didn't have as good of a year as he had in 2023 as he did in 2022. And 2022 was like that contract year type of vibe, right? So Saquon went out there, put up the big numbers, over 1,000 yards. To me, he was definitely the focal point of this offense. Now, in the offseason, there was a lot of, statements made by Saquon Barkley saying they didn't offer me the deal, and Giants fans going back and forth with Saquon, actually giving him a nickname, calling him Snakequan now, saying that, well, they offered you a deal in 2022 right around the bye, and you didn't take that deal. And I don't think we are in the position to be able to speak about what value Saquon sees himself having for the New York Giants. He ends up going and signing the deal with the Philadelphia Eagles, 3 years, damn near $38 million, $26 million of that guaranteed. The Giants, to replace him, went out there and got Devin Singletary, paid him $5.5 million a year. You could have kind of doubled that up, and you would have been able to get, Saquon Barkley back on this roster. Running backs is not an expensive position. We all know that, and that's why a lot of people don't like to spend high draft capital on running backs. And I do understand people who feel a certain way about picking Saquon Barkley at number 2. Here's the thing. At least they committed to the decision. I'm not a Dave Gettleman fan by any means necessary, but he was committed to trying to win with Eli Manning at the quarterback position. 2019 comes around. They paid Eli Manning $20 million to be back on that roster. They draft Daniel Jones, and 2 games in, Eli Manning is on the bench. So this year, we go out there, we spend some money on the offensive line. Joe Shane has spoke about that's one of his, positions of emphasis, that he has to get a good offensive line around Daniel Jones to be able to see what he is. Entering year 6, they spent $10 million per year on John Runyon. They spent $7 million per year on Jermaine Illuminor, who I've got a little bit of beef about that. Not the money spent, but where they're putting him on the offensive line, which is at left guard, which I think is very puzzling. We lost Darren Waller, and now you're trying to figure out, will these moves and the money spent on the offensive line, and also the draft capital that you spent bringing in Malik Neighbors, is that going to be able to supplement for the lack of productivity that we're going to have on this offense, losing Saquon Barkley? Can guys like Hyatt step up and be, a guy who has a well-rounded route tree and do more than just get the long passes down the field and take the top off of defenses? Can Wan'Dale Robinson take that next leap and be a guy who might be pushing 1,000 yards? Love what I saw to Wan'Dale Robinson last season. I do think that he is ascending, and, he's definitely on his way up. Half of his yards were yak last year, so if Daniel Jones can get him the ball in stride, I think we'll see a lot of success from Wan'Dale Robinson, who, of the wide receiver core, I'm the least worried about. I think the floor for Wan'Dale Robinson, we kind of know what it is. But let's talk about that specific tweet there just a little bit more here. He's talking about pretty much, while Saquon was here, all we did was lose. While Odell Beckham was here, all we did was lose. Now, I'm in the minority when it comes to wins being a quarterback stat. And I know that, I understand that, but I place a lot of emphasis on the quarterback. I think a quarterback is the reason why you can see yourself as a team that is pushing for a championship. And I think a lot of the reason why the New York Giants have been kind of in the dumps for the past 5 going on 6 years has a lot to do with the quarterback position. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and blame it all on Daniel Jones, but when you don't got that elite guy or that unicorn at the quarterback position, you're going to make everything else different, right? Now, most people agree that quarterback wins is not a quarterback stat. So let's talk about Saquon through this tenure, right? 34 wins, 64 losses during the Saquon Barkley tenure. That's in 6 seasons. Now, for people who have they're splitting the room when it comes to wins being a quarterback stat, I think that everybody can agree that wins is not a running back stat. So I just think that it's a little bit crazy to kind of look at it like, well, we're not winning because of the running back, right? Now, during the 6 years before Saquon Barkley got to the New York Giants, the record was not that much different from 2012 to 2017. 42 wins, 54 losses. The Giants have been top 10 in scoring just one time since 2013. It was in 2015, believe it or not, and we had a 6-11 record. They've been 25th or worse 6 times during that Saquon Barkley span. So you got to find a way to be able to win games. I don't think that a running back is it. And we're going to talk about identity here a little bit, right? Because this was in response to me saying that I told y'all that Saquon Barkley was the identity. And you saw it in the front office on the Hard Knocks episode that a lot of people, within the organization were questioning, okay, well, if you're not going to bring back Saquon Barkley, then where's the productivity going to come on this offense? 2023 is kind of a wash. There's really not many numbers to really pull from in 2023. But when you look at the last full season with, Saquon Barkley healthy, Daniel Jones healthy, and his only season healthy, the Giants got out to 7-2 very quickly in 2022. And I just wanted to talk about how they did it from a quarterback and a running back perspective. Because for me, and I agree with, somebody brought this to my attention on Twitter about Tim from Online Big Blue saying, well, if you're paying a guy this kind of money at the quarterback position, shouldn't he be the identity? And I'm 100% in agreement with that. Like, if you're paying your quarterback that kind of money, he should be at least the beginning of the identity of what your team should be. Now, in those first 9 games in 2022, Saquon Barkley was averaging 20.4 attempts per game. He had 4 touchdowns. He was averaging 103 rushing yards per game. He had 30 targets, and he had 150 receiving yards. And meanwhile, Daniel Jones had 174.7 passing yards per game, 27 attempts per game, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. This was by the time we got to week 9. 57 rushing attempts, which averages out to 8 rushing attempts per game. We got out to 7-2 by running the ball primarily with Saquon Barkley, which did open up things for Daniel Jones in the running game. But this is the difference between Daniel Jones in 2022 and in every other year outside of his career, maybe outside of 2019. The only thing Daniel Jones did differently in 2022 was take care of the football. The passing touchdowns were very similar. We saw them go out there and run a lot of read option with them. He was more successful, I will say that. In 2022, he was a little bit more successful with the read option, but I credit a lot of that to getting the attempts. 120 rushing attempts for Daniel Jones was the most in his career by far. And we know he's a good straight line runner. We don't know if that's going to be the case coming off the ACL, but we know that Daniel Jones is a good straight line runner. And I think that he did his job. A lot of people focused on that in 2022. They're saying, he's doing what he was asked to do. And we really, we can't place fault on Daniel Jones for doing his job. We can ask for more, though. And I think a lot of Giants fans acted as if we couldn't ask for more. Now, there was a clip during Hard Knocks that really stood out to me. And it was Joe Schoen having a conversation with former running back Frank Gore. And Joe Schoen spoke on the heavy utilization of Saquon Barkley at Penn State and pretty much insinuating that, because he got so many carries in college and then also 6 years in the NFL, that maybe he's kind of breaking down a little bit and the tread on the tires is, pretty much bald here. And he talked about running backs falling off at the age of 27, which to me sounds a lot like a Twitter conversation, And when you saw the way that the New York Giants front office was having these conversations on Hard Knocks, especially when they were all in the room at the same time, I expect our front office to have more high-level conversation than that. To me, like I said, it reminded me of a Twitter conversation. Like, you got one guy saying, well, how are we going to get more offense if we don't have Saquon Barkley out there? You got a general manager who's out there saying, well, we still got to find out who Daniel Jones is entering year 6, y'all. To me, it didn't sound like a professional conversation. I expected to watch that Hard Knocks episode and get a little bit more than what I get out of the Twitter spaces, the conversations I have on YouTube, because these guys are in the room on a daily basis. And what I would do to be a fly on that wall, but that's not the case. I thought that Frank Gore said something, and I'm the kind of person that I do harp on details, maybe to a fault. Like, I look at tape over and over and over again and look for nuances and look for things that stand out, right? And same thing with that Hard Knocks. I've watched that episode maybe like 9 times. Anytime it's on HBO, I'll just put it on. A good movie like Old School, or a good movie like How High, something like that, like a stoner flick. When it's on, even if you're doing something else, you might just turn it on in the background. I've been doing that with Hard Knocks since it aired last Tuesday. Something that stood out to me. When Joe Schoen was explaining all of this stuff to Frank Gore didn't say a lot of words. He literally just said a couple of words. He said 3 words. He said, he's talented, though. And to me, that stood out. I think that what Frank Gore was insinuating there was like, maybe Saquon Barkley's one of them ones, like a Derrick Henry, like a Austin Eckler, who breached the age where running backs typically tend to fall off, right? Maybe he's insinuating that he's one of those. Joe Schoen responded with, well, we tried to get something done in 2022 and ended up franchise tagging him. You got to think about the kind of player that Frank Gore was, too. He played 16 seasons in the NFL at the running back position, and he didn't retire until he was 37 years old. I really do think that he was trying to say, like, hey, man, you might want to look at this situation with more of a keen eye because you might be making an egregious mistake here. And Joe Schoen, even, you saw it on the Hard Knocks episode 1, Joe Schoen didn't even think that Saquon Barkley was going to be able to go out here and get that kind of money or command that kind of money that he was asking for in this market. And the way that running backs have been devalued, I think a lot of people might have agreed with him if this would have aired before the contract got signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. But it's crazy that now, instead of watching Saquon go out of the division and possibly not get paid the dollar amount that he was asking for, and looking at our general manager like, man, he really knows ball, or he really knows general managing because he understands the market. I thought the questions made sense, but instead now we got to watch Saquon Barkley play within the division 2 times a year against the New York Giants and definitely be a factor in how we succeed from this point on. And now the way that teams are going to be looking at the parallels, the way that fans are going to be looking at the parallels now, like if Saquon Barkley goes out here to Philadelphia and has anywhere near a solid year, people are going to point the finger at the general manager. And I think rightfully so. I really do think rightfully so. Saquon Barkley is not the kind of player that comes around every so often. And whether you think that it was a mistake to draft him at the number 2 position or not, he still was the identity of this offense. Saquon didn't sign up to be the identity. I'm sure that when Saquon Barkley got here and saw guys like Odell Beckham and some decent pieces left over from the defense, he felt like, hey, man, I could come into this offense and possibly be a crutch for this offense. And then you trade away the Giants' number 1 weapon in Odell Beckham the following year. And I thought that was all done a little bit too early. You placed the leadership and captain type roles on Saquon Barkley early on in his second year as a professional. And I thought that he did a great job of being a professional through and through throughout his Giants career. And every year, I thought to an egregious point, made it very known that he wanted to be a Giant for life. So let me see what y'all talking about. That's my thoughts on it. I know that was a little long-winded, but, I just have a lot to talk about these 4 topics on Hard Knocks. Let me see what the chat is talking about here one time. D. Brown says it is an overreaction. I can tell already this guy is going to have a problem with neighbors. The neighbor situation is going to be very interesting because we saw when Kenny Golladay got here that he had his beef with not getting the ball early on. That was a primetime game in Washington. I was at that game, didn't get to see it live, but when I got home, I got to see the clips of it with Kenny Golladay screaming at Jason Garrett and Daniel Jones. And Neighbors is, the kind of guy that I think he's a no-nonsense type of guy. You saw it early on when he got here. Some of the comments that he made, as far as the quarterback, rehabbing and whatnot and being like, man, look, pretty much we're not focused on that. We're focused on the guys that are here right now in minicamp. We'll focus on those guys when they get here. I like the energy I'm getting from Neighbors. Seems like an accountable type of player, but I'm right there with you on this, D. Brown. Sebastian says it's an overreaction too, as well. Michael Knight says, unfortunately, it's true. Jaden says it's an overreaction as well. My man 1T said it's an overreaction. Sigma, same vibes. My man The Beard saying same vibes. Chance Chambers says overreaction, made the playoffs with both as the key pieces of the offense. Still don't think he's a top 5 running back in Giants history, but he didn't do nothing. So I think you might be kind of taking the under on this one. Still don't think he's a top 5 running back in Giants history. That's interesting. I mean, it was a short-lived career. There have been some good running backs for the New York Giants, especially when you get to talking about some of these OGs. I mean, like triple OGs back in the 60s and those kind of vibes. Joe Morris, definitely one of them. Rodney Hampton, one of the biggest reasons why I'm a New York Giants fan. I was a huge Rodney Hampton fan. Tiki Barber, obviously. I would put Saquon in my top 5, though. The part that I disagree with in your statement is he didn't do nothing. He carried this team. The playoff berth that we got in 2022, you don't get that without Saquon Barkley on that roster. Let me see. Marjorie, shout out to Marjorie one time in the building. How you doing, Queen? She says, I love Saquon, but it was time to move on. And I do agree with this statement here, too, because as much as I feel like Saquon Barkley was a solid player and he was a piece that you could build upon, especially if you had the quarterback position, the Giants are not in position to win right now. They're just not in position to win. They're when you look at this roster 3 years in, we'll say 2 years with another draft with Joe Schoen, the Giants roster does not look like they've taken grand steps into the direction of trying to compete for championships. And you can't pay a running back when you're still in that position. The Giants kind of had to have a true look in the mirror and go, we have to rebuild this team after 2022. Y'all know I've brought up the conversations on the GM Shuffle podcast with Mike Lombardi, who talked about how when he talked to Brian Dable after the season, that Brian Dable and them were kind of like, smelling their own shit and thinking it didn't stink. Like he said they pretty much had a irrational perspective on the roster and thinking that they were better than they really were. And I think 2023 was extremely humbling for them. Let me see what else we got. Chris P says he's taking the under between Saquon and Odell. The Giants got 3 playoff games and 1 playoff win. This is more of an indictment on the quarterback position and injuries of those players. I agree with what you're saying here, but I think that this is not really on the quarterback, to be honest. I think that this is more of an indictment on the organization. Okay? When you talk about not getting wins from a running back, you got to think about what we're really saying here. The organization drafted these guys, y'all. They were the ones that went out there and drafted Saquon Barkley with the number 2 pick. And then a year later panicked and said, oh, you know what? Forget all that building stuff we were trying to do around Eli. He's washed now. Let's go ahead and draft a quarterback, when we really should have did it the year before, or we could have waited another year and possibly went after Justin Herbert the following season. They forced it, and everyone across the NFL community knows that Daniel Jones at number 6 was a force. Now, that was one of my... So we started our podcast in 2019. So that summer, I was doing big research, like for the first time, like outside of the fan perspective, like doing big research on these quarterbacks. That quarterback class was not that great. Rest in peace to Dwayne Haskins, right? I thought that the difference between him and a guy like Daniel Jones was not that grand at the time. I do think that Dwayne Haskins probably would have been the better pick at the time, just going off the process, right? But everyone across the community in the NFL knows that drafting Daniel Jones at 6 was definitely a reach. Thank God we had the extra pick with Dexter Lawrence that we had got from the Odell Beckham trade, because it kind of salvaged that draft a little bit. But, this is an organizational problem. This is not a one-player type of problem. In 2024, I don't think one player should be the identity of your team on any team. If that's the case, and you got a Patrick Mahomes type of unicorn guy, or you got a guy like a Josh Allen over there in Buffalo, then so be it. But I don't think you should be trying to build a roster to have the identity be just one guy. So that's just the one point that I disagree with. 1T in the building says that front office having Twitter convos equals the trolls won. What can we say? Yeah, that's definitely the case, because there are still a lot of people that, in my perspective, I feel are very blind to some of the, the criticism that the Giants deserve, to be honest, because they've made moves that we've seen not pan out, and people still don't use the evidence or the data to be able to pivot their position. They just double down on, Joe Schoen is the savior and the Giants are in a good position. This is going to be the year, 11 wins, and there's no way that I can do that after, a decade of failure. So I'm right there with 1T on this one. Shout out to homie D-Kit one time in the building. What's going on, fam? Hope all is well with you, man. D-Kit. D-Kit is another one that knows ball. D-Kit knows ball, man. Talk ball every day in these spaces, man. Big shout out to D-Kit one time. D-Kid says, exactly, authentic. It sounded like a Spaces convo. And we talk about that, man. We talk about how, maybe there's somebody lurking in on these spaces. We've definitely seen some people pop into spaces. Shout out to OGs like Carl Banks, who have popped up into spaces before. And even guys like Mike Kafka, who have hosted spaces and given us some, insight into what's going on as far as audible calls up front, some of the communication between the center and the quarterback. Love that kind of stuff, man. So I do think they kind of lurking. I don't know how much they watching, though, but big shout out to D-Kit one time in the building. Yeah, so I think this is a general consensus. Everybody kind of thinking this is an overreaction with a couple little caveats there. Shout out to John one time. Day one supporter of this channel. He says, I have no issue with Schoen not overpaying for a running back, because to Schoen, he believes in what he believes in. The GM position is currently his show. Will he regret it? Probably. That's a good perspective on that. I respect that, John. Shout out Big Dash. Big Dash, I was watching Big Dash content last night. Great video you put out on the wide receiver core, man. Love some of those thoughts. Make sure y'all go check out Big Dash Knows, man. Big Dash knows what? New York Giants football. Shout out my guy one time. Rick Bowman is in the building. He says, anything wrong with changing the identity? Absolutely not. And I think they should have thought about that back when they drafted Saquon Barkley. Saquon, listen, dating all the way back to even 2018, the identity of a team should not be the running back at that point in time. That was when we were, already in the transition of quarterbacks and passing game and all of that stuff. So it's good to have a nice hybrid running back. I always say this, hybrid running backs always need a power running back unless you're CMC. And the Giants failed to do that too. They kind of just tried to force Saquon Barkley to be an every down running back. Really reminds me of Reggie Bush when he first came into the league. And Reggie Bush really struggled, his first 4 years, I want to say, in the league before he got a new opportunity to be able to put up 1,000 yards in other offenses when, one, he learned the game, and two, when, offensive coordinators and coaches learned how to utilize him on the NFL level. So definitely nothing wrong with changing the identity. I think the Giants were due to go in and change the identity for sure. Let me see what else we got here, man. We deep in the building today. That's all I got to say. It's a bunch of y'all in here. So shout out to y'all. Definitely want to, make the replay value on this show, presentable and good for people that are watching it. So I will try to fly through these comments as fast as I can, and we'll get to the next Giant overreaction. Let me see. Radical says Reggie and Deuce were a great 1-2 combo. Shout out to the homie BT in the building one time. He says, when you run options or RPOs with a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, it will only help the Eagles O-line and Saquon. Absolutely. I mean, you got to think they got 2 wide receiver ones over there on the outside. They have a quarterback who's a running threat and a red zone maniac, as I like to call him. A lot of people want to give, Jalen Hurts a lot of flack for the 1-yard touchdowns, with the tush push and whatnot. I saw a really good video, a compilation of highlights of Jalen Hurts, deep shots that end up being falling within the 5-yard line, and then he's got to go and handle business. So it's not like, his team is carrying him, down to the 1-yard line like some Byron Leftwich type of vibes and whatnot. Jalen Hurts is carrying his team down there, and I do think that he's a quarterback, especially in the New York market, with the hate that we have towards the Philadelphia Eagles, that really doesn't get a fair assessment, because it's like, I still hear people saying, like, if you put Daniel Jones on the Philadelphia Eagles, they're a better team. And I don't know how much I agree with that. Shout out to homie Ricker one time in the building, man. That's my dude right there. What's going on, Ricker? Let me see. He said, what I want to see out of this regime is to actually stick with a plan. They had a plan in 2022, scrapped it to accelerate a new plan in 2023. That's facts right there. That went bad, so now we are on plan C for 2024. What happens if we have a halfway decent season? Do they scrap that plan again? Let me see. On our 4th plan in 4 years. Okay, I'm not sure what that UOO26 thing is, but maybe that's just some typo vibes. All right, so great point here, Ricker. Love this right here, because they are pivoting every year. I've talked about this. The way that they draft even insinuates that. They're going running back. They're going tight end, cornerback, all these defensive backs every year being drafted. They're not fixing the problems that they are trying to plug the holes in, in the previous drafts, and I'm definitely with you on that. You look at in 2022 when they first got here, didn't take the 5th-year option. Looked like they were kind of committed to the rebuild, although Joe Shane did say that he wanted to try to, win and try to compete while this team was in the rebuild mode. They go out there, they have a little bit of success. Coach of the year in 2022 for Brian Dable. They go into 2023 thinking that, hey, we're going to go out here and try to compete for a championship. And where they completely steered wrong is thinking that Darren Waller was going to be the wide receiver one that they could bring in, and he was going to fix those Daniel Jones passing issues. We saw him get injured, which we pretty much knew would happen. Even when we were doing the stat prediction show at the beginning of the year last season, when I was predicting Darren Waller's numbers, I did like a modest 700-something yards or something like that, maybe 800 yards and like 3 touchdowns, because I tried to factor in the injuries. And, sure shit stinks. He went out there and he got hurt, tried to battle through the injuries. He was the leading receiver as far as tight ends go in the league right when we got up to the Jets game, and he got hurt, but it didn't work. And then now they're trying to pivot off that again and go, oh, we kind of messed up. Let's kind of commit to the rebuild again. And this kind of rebuild kind of seems like, okay, well, if it doesn't work with the quarterback position, at least we have the pieces around the new quarterback that we're going to draft or bring in and whatnot. So, yeah, that's definitely a mistake. You cannot keep pivoting. And honestly, that is a mirror reflection of what the New York Giants have been doing at the coaching position, at the general manager position for the past, better half of the decade here. 3 different coaching staffs. You've had 3 different general managers if you date back to Jerry Reese. So, yeah, I mean, you got to commit to something. That's the only way you're going to find out if it truly works. And my thing is, I didn't want to commit to Daniel Jones. I didn't want to commit to trying to, make a push for a Super Bowl after 2022. I saw a bunch of holes in that roster, and they went out there and they thought that that was the best thing that they should do. And if they were going to do that, at least go all in, push all the chips to the table, right? And that's the one thing right now that even in the Dave Gettleman regime that I thought was one of the worst performances by a general manager in the history of the NFL. When he realized that they were fucking up, he went out there and he said, you know what? I'm about to go all in. He tried to get Kenny Galladay. He drafted Kadarius Toney. He went out there and got a wide receiver by any means. They brought in John Ross. They brought in Kyle Rudolph. And they tried to make our offense move the sticks through the passing game. It failed. But I do have respect for Dave Gettleman's perspective on that once he realized that it was his ass that was on the line and he was about to lose his job, he went all in. That to me says that Joe Schoen's leash is extremely long. I think that the way he's operating, that he knows the Giants have fired their coaching staffs every 2 years for the past 3 regimes. He knows that they've been in and out of general managers and that they're not going to fire him quickly. And I think 2022 gave them a bit of leadway as well. Coach of the year, you get to the playoffs, playoff win. I think that buys them a little more time. And had he went out here and drafted a quarterback, that would have bought him even more time. So I think that we could look back at that, and that could be a major mistake on the behalf of this front office. Shout out Don in the building one time. He said the idea of having Jones pass more this year going to end up in a disaster, and I'm here for it. Laughing my ass off. Shout out to Don one time in the building, man. Y'all, yeah, we got gang in the building. All right, so let's go ahead and get off into this next overreaction so we can kind of switch the topic up. I don't want to harp on this topic too much. You know what they're going to say to me. They're going to be like, why are you talking about a player that's not on our team, man? You know, this is Authentic in the Beard. So we're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about over here. But let's go ahead and get off into this next giant overreaction. Shout out to my guy. He's in the chat right now. And when he posted this one on Twitter, I was like, wow, that would be a great topic to talk about on the show. Shout out my guy, Antonio, man, BT Giants one time. Make sure y'all go follow his podcast too. And check him out on Twitter at BT Giants, man. Always dropping that real. That's what I say about BT. And he's also a guy that has accountability. If he has a bad take, he might even bet some money on it. And if he loses the money or if he loses the bet, he's definitely going to pay you out. That's one thing for sure, man. So big shout out to Antonio. He says, I owe an apology to John Mara. Now, I can't, specifically say exactly what he meant on this, right? But I'll tell you what my interpretation of it was, okay? So Joe Schoen was talking about Saquon Barkley. They had John Mara in the office. Matter of fact, let's run the clip before we get to rapping about it, because I do have this clip here. So let's go ahead and just run the clip from Hard Knocks. If they demonetize me, it's all good. You know what it is. It ain't no thing. So let's go ahead and run this Hard Knocks clip of John Mara in Joe Schoen's office talking about Saquon Barkley.
March 5th is the franchise tag deadlines. We just met about it because we're not going to franchise him. Like, it doesn't make any sense to franchise him. So
unless you think you can trade him after doing that.
Right. And then could we get something and trade him? What are we really going to get? Unless it got down to like $7 million. And I don't want to offer that because I don't want to be like we disrespected him. There's 31 teams. It only takes one to, maybe be open to doing something. If it doesn't get to that, hey, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to let you hit free agency, find out your market, come back and let us know if we can match it. If we can, we'll have those discussions.
I mean, in a perfect world, I'd still like to have him back. Until we can prove that we can have a decent offense without him.
Daniel's making a lot of money, and it's the fork. Like, we got to figure out is he the guy? So we got to protect him. We need to put resources there. Yeah. We have Waller, Belly, a healthy Wandell, Hyatt, Slayton. We'll have to find a running back, but upgrade the offensive line, give him a chance.
That would force us to take a running back in the high to mid.
Or we can still sign one. There's going to be guys, if we're patient, that ended up shaking out. Devin Singletary, who was in Houston, played for $275 this year. Joe Mixon may be a cap casualty, so now you got Saquon, Jacobs, Pollard, Eckler. That's 6 guys right there that are free agents. How many clubs really need running backs where they're going to invest resources in the position? Second week of free agency, I think there'll be some value guys, specifically at the running back position.
Yeah, I wouldn't commit to anything.
All right, so that's the clip. A few things stand out to me on that clip. And one is the deep breath by John Mara, like realization that Saquon Barkley is no longer going to be a New York Giant. You could definitely see that there. And then the air quotes by Joe Schoen, insinuating that, he didn't want the rumor to be that they didn't give Saquon Barkley a fair shake at a deal and whatnot. So to me, that also says that they're very, I won't say concerned, but at least they have an eye on what the fan base thinks and the perspective from the fan base, which I want a GM that's going to operate and not worry about the fans and pleasing the fans and pleasing what people think. The other thing is, Joe Schoen said that trading Saquon, it's a Hail Mary for one, and all the drama. He said it took 10 years off his life. And to me, whatever is better for our football team, you need to go through those trenches and make that happen. I don't care if it takes another 10 years off your life. You hired here to put the New York Giants in the best position possible. Now, Mara says, in a perfect world, I'd like him back. Maybe we draft a running back high, maybe mid-rounds. Now, when I'm telling y'all, these conversations in that office are really looking like Twitter conversations. It's kind of ridiculous. One, that the owner would even be in position to say something like that. And I know a lot of people, have thrown their fair share of shade at John Mara over the past, you could say, 2-3 decades, ever since he took over the team. And I get that part. But they seem a little bit oblivious in that office. Joe Schoen not understanding the market and not understanding what other teams are going to be willing to give for a running back like Saquon Barkley. We saw plenty of running backs go get paid this offseason, Derrick Henry being one of them. Austin Eckler got a little bit of money. Let me think. Aaron Jones got a little bit of money. There's about 5 or 6 running backs that got paid. And I know that the general consensus around the league is that running back has been devalued, but that does not mean that position is not important. I think that if you can't draft well, especially in the mid to late rounds, bringing in guys like Isaac Pacheco and stuff like that, or Isaiah Pacheco, you're going to have to find a way to sign a guy. And I'm for the move with Devin Singletary. I like it. You're spending about half the money. I'm all good with that. But it's just puzzling that these conversations are happening within the front office. And this clip to me, it stood out because a lot of people are running around saying that this means that Joe Schoen has full, capability to do what he wants in that room. And if he doesn't want a player, then he doesn't have to have that player on the roster. And I'm speaking about Daniel Jones here because if you look at the Albert Breer reports that came out before Daniel Jones signed his contract, they literally make it seem like we were down to the deadline and a phone call was made from Daniel Jones to John Mara that was pretty much like, hey, dog, I need that cash. I'm trying to be a Giant. And John Mara goes, all right, Joe Schoen, forget what you're talking about. We're going to sign Daniel Jones to $40 million a year, $92 million guaranteed. Now, I don't know if I owe an apology to John Mara, so I'm going to take the push on this one because I do need more information on this. This is one little clip that shows that Joe Schoen does have some leverage, obviously. I mean, he's the general manager, and I thought that in the first place. There was never a thought in my mind that John Mara was in there hiring a GM and being like, nah, dog, you got to do it like this, okay? I don't care if you don't want Daniel Jones here. We're going to find a way to move on. I think this is mutual, and from all the conversations, the interviews that I've seen, especially the Chris Sims interview with Joe Schoen, they all insinuate that Joe Schoen is on board with Daniel Jones. And you saw him saying, I'm not giving up on this kid, and a bunch of things in that Hard Knocks episode that, support that thinking and that line of thinking. So for me, I'm going to take the push on this one. I kind of want to see where y'all stand on this. To me, this at least says that Joe Schoen has some control, right? And I think that doesn't mean that when he presents a decision-making type of opportunity that it's going to be where, neither party has any say. I do think that if John Mara wanted to press the issue a little bit more about the Saquon Barkley stuff, which I think they did, Hard Knocks is not going to show us everything. And you cannot forget that the New York Giants have the final edit in all of this, which is crazy because some of this stuff coming out, is detrimental to the organization and the perspective of the organization. And they still allowed it to be edited on the Hard Knocks episode. And we're going in the next Giant Overreaction, we're going to talk about that as well when I get to the next topic. But let me see what y'all talking about here. It looks like a lot of pushes from everybody in the building. Oh, big shout out to Hefe, man. What's going on, Hefe? Hope all is well. Hefe was in that the video with Talking Giants that came out today too. Again, if y'all missed that in the beginning, Talking Giants did a really good episode where they featured, I think, 13 to 15 content creators for 15 minutes. Me, Hefe, everybody from New York Revival is on that one. My boys from He's a Giant, Sal and Monty is on that. KB, I saw Diggy was on it and a few others. Definitely a dope episode. Go check that out when we leave here and whatnot, and tell them Authentic sent you. My man Ben Dawson is in the building. What's going on, fam? Ben Dawson said, Push, you can't be the owner and not have a say. Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's your team at the end of the day. D. Brown says he's taking a hard push. Let me see. Joe Marr says, would have loved to see the conversation regarding Daniel Jones and contract talks. That would have been amazing. You know, we're a year off from that, but that would have been amazing to really see how that went. And I think they could have featured that, but they wouldn't have a lot of that footage from HBO. That's the difference. You know, the cameras were in the room there. I did notice on that John Mara clip, though, there was a hard edit there that maybe a lot of people didn't catch. But when the conversation starts, it looks like John Mara is like seated at the desk with Joe Schoen off to the left at the corner of the desk. And then when they chop from the first statement, he's standing up and he's in the back of the office. So, you know, you got to take that editing with a little bit of a grain of salt for sure. But I'm right there with you on that, Joe Marr. Michael Knight taking the push on this one time. Sebastian Sakpa said he's taking the push on this one as well. Let me see. Greg is in the building. He says, happy to have made it this time. Happy you could be here, Greg. Appreciate you pulling up. Sigma taking the push. Ben Dawson said wasted millions on Jones. And it's crazy. We're still trying to figure out if he's the guy. It's absolutely ridiculous. Radical says, isn't Singletary best when he has a running mate? You could say that for the majority of his career. He did get the most touches that he's ever had in his career last year with the Houston Texans, and I thought it was going to be a bit more running back by committee with Dameon Pierce over there, who rushed for 1,000 yards the previous year, and he was a rookie when he rushed for 1,000 yards, but they definitely went towards Singletary being the main running back over there this past year, and he was decent. You know, he had over 800 yards. I think the touchdowns were somewhere around 6 or something like that, but he definitely had a decent year. Most of his career, he has been a part of running back by committee, and I do think that's the plan with the Giants this year. Tyrone Tracy, you know, was not drafted for no reason. I think he can be a gadget guy coming out of the backfield, former wide receiver. A lot of tread left on those tires, even though he's 24, about to be 25, I think in November or something like that. But he only played 1 year at running back. I believe that was at Purdue. And didn't have many carries until his super senior year, 6th year. I think he was a senior when he saw like more than 17 carries. So that guy definitely has a lot of gas left in the tank. I hope they can find a way to use him, and it's not like an Eric Gray type of situation where you don't give him a lot of carries. I think Eric Gray only has like 30 carries in his entire career or something like that. But I think Singletary's capable, but that offensive line, big question mark for sure. Sigma says, I feel like we jumping on Shane about the running back market with hindsight being 2020. I feel Shane wasn't wrong in that thinking. I think he was just wrong on the dollars, you know, and just the expectation. I forget who the executive was in the office with the Giants, Chris something, I can't remember his last name, but he was pretty much going against him, like saying everything that was correct in the market. And you know what they say, though? They're like, if you're a smart person, you will make sure you aren't the smartest person in the room. So I will give Joe Schoen his credit for having a staff around him like that to ask those difficult type of questions like that and present those cases, you know, so that you can actually start to think about it. But that dude was spot on. He even said, like, what about a team like Philadelphia? You know, he talked about a team like the Rams, I believe. And, you know, it's good to have those kind of people in the room. But I'm okay with Shane. I think a lot of people, when they see me criticize a move from Joe Schoen, they are like, they automatically assume, oh, you don't like Joe Schoen. You know, he's on your bad side. And I'm like, no, I'm going to give him his time. I'm patient when it comes to general managers. Nothing when it comes to rebuilding a team is going to happen overnight. Best case scenario, the Giants would be going into this year, and our fan base would have confidence if Joe Schoen's job was done in a perfect manner. But losing the free agents that we lost this past free agency period, you know, guys like McKinney, guys like Saquon Barkley, those guys are going to be tough to replace. And I said this on Bleacher Report when we were doing a bunch of free agent streams. If Joe Schoen could get this roster just back to average after free agency, I would commend him, and that's all I've done. I mean, he's done a good job of getting this roster back. The big egregious mistake is the quarterback. I don't even think letting Saquon Barkley go is really a terrible mistake or nothing like that. We'll find out. No matter what happens, if Saquon Barkley goes to Philly and balls out, Giants fans are going to feel some kind of way. But I'm right there with you on this one, Sigma. I'm okay with Joe Schoen. It's not really jumping on him, but these guys are paid very hefty, and I think that they're paid enough to be able to, receive a little bit of criticism from fans who might question stuff. And a lot of fans won't question nothing. They're just going to say we got the best GM, best quarterback, best running back, best wide receiver, best draft class, best everything. I'm just not one of those people. I've always been a And I say this on the channel a lot. We're not going to keep it pessimistic. We're not going to keep it optimistic, but we're going to keep it funky and be realistic. And I try to be realistic. And when I look at this team going into the year, realistically, they don't scream to me that they're going to win a lot of games. So we'll see. Arturo's in the building. He says, do you think this is the first year DJ has the best roster around him? I'm tired of everyone saying he doesn't have the best weapons. I honestly think that last year might have been a better opportunity. It really depends on what Malik Neighbors comes out here and does. Definitely has the capability to be a guy for sure. 9 100-yard games last season, 4 of them over 140. A lot of people saying that Malik Neighbors could be the best wide receiver in this draft over Marvin Harrison Jr. Definitely a dynamic playmaker, can win from the slot, can win outside, can do it all. And I just hope that translates to the NFL. The one thing that I always pump the brakes on is the speed of the game in the NFL, and the way that changes. You never really know how these college players, what hurdles they're going to have to jump over and what obstacles they're going to have to, try to beat when they get in the NFL. So we'll see how things go. There's distractions, there's the money, there's all that stuff. So we'll see how it goes. But I do think last year's roster was set up for success a little bit better. Wish we would have went out there and got a wide receiver one, DeAndre Hopkins, who went to the Tennessee Titans, put up 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. That would have been great to have on the roster with Darren Waller. And maybe you wouldn't have had to, target and attack Darren Waller so much during the year. But, offensive line-wise, trash offensive line. We're hoping that some of these moves pay dividends with Jermaine Illuminor, with John Runyon, Aaron Stinney, and hopefully Evan Neal can get on the right track, and you can possibly use him as something on this offensive line. We'll see how that goes. But I think it's close. I think this year is close. The defensive moves with Brian Burns, but losing Xavier McKinney, that's going to be tough. And Tyler Newbin was drafted to fill his shoes. And we'll see, what size shoes Xavier McKinney was wearing and what size shoes Tyler Newbin wears, because everything that I'm seeing out of minicamp, the hype is not quite there, but it's early. Can't wait to get out to training camp and really get a good gauge of what's going on. Momo says it's an overreaction. We don't owe Mara an apology. Saquon should have been traded at the deadline last season, and Mara forced that not to happen. Now they just lost him for nothing. This is why they continue to be inept. Momo out here dropping bars, y'all, because that's facts. Definitely didn't consider that part of it. You could have traded Saquon before the deadline, and that does seem like that was a John Mara decision. We don't 100% know, but it does seem like it was a John Mara decision. And Joe Shane, if you look at his history and Brian Dable's history with the Buffalo Bills, running backs was never a priority. Although Shady McCoy was, headed towards the end of his career, they had no problems allowing him to just walk out and go to free agency. And, with Josh Allen at the quarterback position, they neglected the running back every year, maybe in a fashion that cost them games in the playoffs, if you ask me, because they placed a lot on Josh Allen's shoulders early on. But Momo, facts, dropping big facts right there. I cannot disagree with that at all. I guess my push was probably smart because, when you present this as an overreaction, I do think it could be an overreaction for sure. Let me see. Juice Jones in the building. What's going on, Juice? Hope all is well, fam. Juice says, why are you referencing the market when these are major needs for your team? I'm trying to see what you mean with that. Probably speaking on Joe Shane, referencing the market. I guess running back is a major need. The part that I'll give Joe Shane a little bit of credit on is he knew the other running backs that he was going to target, and he had an answer for everything that John Mara said. John Mara said, in an ideal world, I would love to have Saquon here. He was like, I feel you on that, but we paid our quarterback $40 million, and we got to find out if he's the guy, and we got to be able to protect him. So we got to take some of that, we got to allocate some of those funds and be able to put those towards the offensive line. And then also when he talked about, when John Mara said, hey, maybe we got to draft a running back high in this draft, maybe in the first couple of rounds or in the mid rounds, he said, well, that's not necessarily true. Joe Shane said, there are guys out there in the free agent, in free agency that we could go out there and acquire as well. And he had a plan. I'll give him that. So he said that before they went out there and got Devin Singletary. They went out there and got one of the better running backs on the free agent market. And I think when it comes to value, like not spending a lot of money on the running back position, because you don't want to go out there and spend money on a guy like Aaron Jones. You didn't want to pay like $8-9 million for a running back. He spent half the money, and then he used some of the funds to allocate for the offensive line. So I do like that portion of it, and it really all depends on how you feel about the running back position. And I think after this year, we're going to be able to really see, how important that is to Daniel Jones and this team moving forward. If you see our running back by committee start to look a little bit like when we had Devontae Booker, Wayne Gallman, our lead back being around 500, 600 yards, then yeah, we're definitely going to look back at this with 2020 vision and be like, he made the wrong decision. So I'm right there with you on that. Shout out to Ben Harris in the building one time. He says, seems as if there is a day three rookie running back that always surprises the league every year. All can hope Tracy gets an opportunity. Facts, man. My guy was Trey Benson out of Florida State. I was extremely, extremely high on him. You would have had to spend a third-round draft pick to get him, though. He was high on a lot of people's boards as far as the running back position goes. But, yeah, you hope Tyrone Tracy can be a guy. If I forget the other running back out of Kentucky that I really liked, Davis. Davis was also high up on my board, and I thought we could have got him late in the draft as well. But the thing is if Tyrone Tracy doesn't pan out, fans are going to look at this like another wasted draft pick, another Gary Brightwell, or I don't even want to put Eric Gray in that category just quite yet, but another Gary Brightwell. So definitely these draft picks got to pan out. Joe Shane's drafts have been, I'd be being very kind if I said his drafts have been average. You had 11 picks in your first draft. And, all you really have to show from that is Kayvon Thibodeau as far as superstar potential type of play. So, yeah, I'm definitely with you on that, Ben. Shout out my guy Sal in the building one time. What's going on, man? Make sure y'all go follow He's a Giant. Sal says, putting a lot of pressure on a rookie to save a bunch of jobs. Seems like a strange bet to me. Yeah, facts, bro. And look, we've already seen Joe Shane make this mistake before when he signed Daniel Jones to the big contract. He banked on a bunch of rookies and a bunch of developmental players to make that leap on the offensive line to protect his $40 million a year investment. And look at how that went. And here we go, doubling and tripling down on it. Right there with you on that, man. Definitely go subscribe to He's a Giant podcast, y'all. Sal and them dropping gems over there, and they're maybe the only podcast in the Giants community that is literally covering these players coming out of the draft a year ahead of time. So big salute to them, man. Sal is definitely a ball knower. That dude knows ball. We have great conversations, and Sal's going to be in the documentary too, man. I lined up an interview with Sal. Just got to get out there and get that interview done, man. But big shout out to Sal one time in the building. Let me see. I see some people talking about Dak Prescott. Jamar says, I highly doubt Cowboys let Dak walk. I'm with you on that. And if Dak did walk, he's not going to be a New York Giant. I'll tell you that much. He's smart enough to do that. He's been owning us for the past couple of years. Big shout out to Adam Costas in the building one time. Make sure y'all go subscribe to Adam. He's got a good running channel over there as well. Realistic. Let me see who else we got in the building. Nova says, let's not sleep on Dante Miller either. He was a sneaky little pickup. That kid has real speed. I'm with you on that. Ben Dawson says, out of those offensive line draft picks, what's your grade for the front office? Oh, man, are we talking about McKeithen, Azidu, Evan Neal? Ugh. I got to go a D-. I'm going D- on it. I went back and looked at snaps with McKeithen at left tackle when Joe Shane was talking about how poor our offensive line was in the Miami game. I went back and looked at that game and the Buffalo game. Marcus McKeithen, bro. That guy, he needs some work. I'm surprised he's still on this roster, straight up and down. And I know he's a young player, but double dipping in that whole North Carolina offensive line, I won't even speak on it. It was crazy. Dash says that Dante Miller's going to have a tough time. He'll have limited snaps and will need the ball out with every opportunity. Yeah, that's real. And then Adam says, my issue is what Joe said. He is still trying to find out if Jones is the guy in year 6. Not a smart move to sign a guy. You are still figuring out if he is the guy. And that's great timing right there. So let's go ahead and get off into this next Giant Overreaction. All right, so let's talk about it, man. Still evaluating the quarterback is crazy, Adam. I'm definitely with you on that. So this one comes from It's Tight End Way. Says, you pay Daniel Jones $40 million a season and you're still unsure on whether he's your answer. That's an indictment on your decision-making. Y'all let me know if y'all think this is an overreaction or if this is a spot-on take. If you think it's an overreaction, go ahead and throw them O's up in the chat. If you think this take is not an overreaction, go ahead and put a U in the chat to represent that you are taking the under one time on this one. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit. Y'all know I love to talk about the quarterback over here on Authentic in the Beard. Daniel Jones, injured for 4 out of 5 seasons. The stat that I've been talking about for an entire season, 38 consecutive regular season games without back-to-back multiple touchdown passes. I don't even understand how that's possible. He's got 9 300-yard games in 5 seasons, just 4 300-yard games post-2019. Just 8 games in his entire career with multiple passing touchdowns since the start of 2021. He's been sacked 74 times in his last 22 games. I know a lot of that's on the offensive line. I get that. But at some point, you got to point the finger at the quarterback, because we saw Tyrod Taylor come out here, only get sacked 17 times in 2023, took the most dropbacks of any quarterback. Daniel Jones walked into or was responsible for 20% of his pressures, according to PFF last season. 64 turnovers, with less passing touchdowns in his career, with 62 passing touchdowns, a playoff berth, we got to talk about the good, a playoff victory, a clinching playoff game against the Colts, right? You know, got us into the playoffs, had 2 touchdowns on the ground, big game, standing ovation from the Giants crowd and all that stuff. But again, you got to ask yourself, are wins really a quarterback stat, right? I say they are, right? But a lot of people don't want to admit that. They'll say wins are not a quarterback stat. If wins are not a quarterback stat, then I think you got to pump the brakes on that playoff win. Are playoff wins a quarterback stat? Y'all let me know in the chat. I think it was an indictment on the front office and the decision-making from Joe Schoen, because you didn't let him test the market. You never really let another quarterback compete for the job. And that goes beyond Joe Schoen. That goes back to Dave Gettleman as well, and Joe Judge and Jason Garrett and Pat Shurmur, who was only here for that, that quick 1 season with Daniel Jones. Haven't drafted another quarterback during Daniel Jones' entire tenure. And the only guy that you brought in to kind of, I guess, challenge was Tommy DeVito, and you could possibly say Tyrod Taylor, but it was very clear and apparent from the beginning of 2022 that Tyrod had no shot at being the starting quarterback for the New York Giants. And I think that was another egregious mistake on the New York Giants, because if you would have just brought Tyrod Taylor in, declined the 5th-year option, and just played Tyrod Taylor from the jump, which is what Emory Hunt from CBS said, and Giants fans gave him hell for that. He talked about Tyrod Taylor being the better quarterback all the way back in the summer of 2022. And then it took us to get all the way to 2023, Daniel Jones to get hurt and be injured for the rest of the season. It was the Miami game first, then it was the Raiders game with the ACL, to see Tyrod Taylor get some significant snaps and show his value, and that he indeed was a better quarterback than Daniel Jones, especially in 2023. More decisive, better pocket manipulation, better pocket maneuvering. Some of these plays, I saw somebody did a compilation of Tyrod Taylor highlights, because there was a statistic that Tyrod Taylor was number 1 in the NFL last year, and it had something to do with like explosive play rate or, throwing the ball down the field or something like that. And looking at those highlights, Daniel Jones don't got plays like that on his resume within his 5 years of being the quarterback for the Giants. When you looked at like 2021 and 2022 for Daniel Jones, the biggest highlight for Daniel Jones was a catch coming out of the backfield at the quarterback position, a one-handed catch, and then going all the way back to the run against the Philadelphia Eagles where he ran for 80 yards, which was, man, we still scored a touchdown on that drive, and it was still an 80-yard run. But the way that Tyrod pressed the issue and made it a point to throw the ball down the field and test these safeties. Look, man, when you play safety, I don't care on any level of football, when you play safety, if the quarterback is dinking and dunking, you're ultimately just going to creep up and creep up and creep up. And if they never throw the ball deep, it just gives you a better opportunity to come up and make plays on the intermediate level. And Daniel Jones just never did that. And you see what Tyrod Taylor did and how he utilized Jalen Hyatt, his best characteristic, which is going down the field and taking these tops off of defenses. So I do think this is an indictment on the general manager, for sure, and his decision-making. Now, I got to say that, you can't expect the decision-making to be flawless, right? But at the same time, when you make a mistake like this is, I think that if things don't work out for Joe Schoen, we're going to come back and look at this and be like, wow, this is where it completely went left. Paying Daniel Jones, it went a little left, I thought, right? But at the end of the day, Daniel Jones had a decent 2022 season, and we can harp on the 15 touchdowns all we want, right? but he did have a decent season. He took care of the football. You know, he led this team, I feel like. When there were times where Saquon Barkley was off the field in key pivotal situations, Daniel Jones showed that he could go out there and put a drive together. And I'm not one of these Giants fans that's going to sit up here and say, oh, man, he was throwing to practice squad wide receivers all year long. No, he wasn't. He was throwing to Marcus Johnson and Davis Sills for a couple of games, okay? Those guys had like under 25 targets on the year. So he couldn't have been throwing to them that much. But guys like Richie James, you know, Daniel Jones maximized his potential. I will say that. And, you know, there was good. So signing Daniel Jones, as much as I wanted to go with the bridge quarterback, I thought if they would have paid him the right dollar amount, it would have been an okay decision. But I think that where it might go completely left is if it doesn't work this time, entering year 6, talking about we still got to figure out if Daniel Jones is the guy. I do think that I agree with the statement on the screen, and I'm taking the under on this one. Let me see what this one is. Okay, yeah, you know, when I see a paragraph, I like to highlight the paragraphs, but we can't highlight that paragraph. Timely support. Salute to you. We'll reach out. So let me know how y'all feeling about this one. Let me see how y'all feeling about this one time. Y'all think that this overreaction? I think most of y'all gonna think that this is spot on. I really do. And Daniel Jones now is put in a position where this is what I do like about what Joe Schoen is doing, where it's do or die now, man. Like, look, you got to go out there and you have to succeed. And it can't look like 2022. You got to go out there and put up a big year. And there are some things going against Daniel Jones when it comes to having the avenue to be able to do that. Coming off a knee injury, you know, it's been about 50-50 as far as knee injuries go with quarterbacks. If they can come back and play at the caliber level that they were at before the knee injury. And I worry about that with Daniel Jones, who running the ball is one of Daniel Jones' skill set. To me, Daniel Jones is a good game manager when he's not turning the ball over. And the thing that gives him that tick is being able to run the ball. When you have that type of option from the offensive coordinator position, or in this year's example, from the head coach position with Brian Dable now calling plays, that makes things a lot easier when you got a quarterback that can run the ball. I'm wondering, how much do defenses key in on what we're doing with the running game this year, and will it allow Daniel Jones to be able to have those openings when he goes to boot, when he goes to run the read option, and when we run RPO? I don't think it's I'm not writing the New York Giants off in 2024. I'm not writing them off, but I just don't have a lot of confidence in this team entering the year. And a lot of it has to do with what's going on at the quarterback position. And also, I do think we still lack weapons. I mean, it's great we got Malik Neighbors in the building. I'm extremely happy about that. But you're also banking on some of these youthful players to take the next step. You know, we're going to need Wan'Dale Robinson to be even better than he was last year, and I thought he was pretty damn good last year. Jalen Hyatt is going to have to take that leap on the outside and become a guy, you know, and he's going to have to get the targets. I think he only had 40 targets last year. Darius Slayton, we know what it is. We know what to expect from Darius Slayton. He's going to come out here and he's going to ball. And he's going to give you the yards necessary. He does it every year. He's going to give you a couple touchdowns. He's going to give you about 600 yards. That's Darius Slayton. Is that going to be enough? I'm not too sure. Joe Marr says that, yes, such a big difference of play when Tyrod is on the field. It opens up a lot more. Yeah, and when it comes from a skill set standpoint, Daniel Jones has the skill set to be Tyrod. You know, I think the one thing he lacks in comparison is the lateral movement. But everything outside of that, he's got the arm talent to be able to throw the ball down the field. I just don't know why he doesn't do it. And there is something that is very cerebral about, viewing the NFL field. I played quarterback on the high school level, and look, I was like 5'7" back then. I could not see shit over the line. And every time I threw the ball, it was mostly to the outside. It was either a slant or it was either a fade route. And half the time, I was just hoping that the wide receiver was going to be where I thought he could be. And you have to have a lot of anticipation and be able to kind of guess where players are going to be, or know where players are going to be, not guess, especially on the NFL level. And I think that Tyrod Taylor just has something cerebral that Daniel Jones just doesn't have. Because from a skill set standpoint, they're similar quarterbacks, and Daniel Jones has the bigger stature. He should be the better quarterback, but for some reason, he wasn't. Adam Costa says that Gardner Minshew had the same numbers this year. Yeah, Gardner Minshew came in, and the Colts don't have a lot going for them. Definitely a better offensive line than the Giants had. Michael Pittman Jr. is the wide receiver 1 last year. I'm so hype on the Colts this year. They're going to get Jelani Woods back at the tight end position. Went out there, spent some draft capital on wide receiver. Jonathan Taylor coming back. He just got paid a little bit of a bag the previous season. I'm hype on the Colts. I think they're going to be a really good team this year, and they're going to contend at least for some playoff spots. Let me see, man. I see a little disrespect in the chat or something. Y'all know what it is, man. Just keep it cool, man. Ain't different opinions. Do y'all thing, man. Just don't attack each other. Y'all know what it is. Let me see. Scrolling here. Nova Nebula says, for me, I feel like giving Jones a contract was the right decision. At the time, the contract was just a bit too lucrative, but that was what the market was demanding. Yeah, I'm not mad at that take. I ain't mad at that. I mean, that's how I looked at it, too. It's like, I wouldn't look at Joe Schoen and be like, man, you are making an egregious mistake by bringing back Daniel Jones. You know, he was year one for him in the Brian Daboll system. It was the dollar amount for me, for sure. Because when you're paying that kind of money and your quarterback is taking up damn near 20% of the salary cap, I mean, how do you plan on building around him? The window is going to be small, and I don't think any Giants fan could have predicted that 2023 was going to go as poorly as it did. For me, I'm right there with you, Nova. I didn't want to bring back Daniel Jones, but the dollar amount is what made it, a mistake, in my opinion. If they would have gave him like a Geno Smith type of contract, paying him around $25 to $28 million a year, I would have been totally cool with it. And I just don't understand this whole market shit. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, right? Like, all right, if the market says that house over there costs $400,000, $500,000 a year, right? Well, this shack over here it keeps me warm, and it has heat, and it has a refrigerator, and it has, the necessary amenities in it. That should not be going for the same rate as the house that costs $400,000. The NFL needs to find a way to just divvy up the market a little bit, and there needs to be a middle class for the market. I don't understand why there isn't one, especially with all these teams trying to capitalize on the rookie deals now. Like, why don't we just make a quarterback portion of the market that's similar to the rookie contracts? These guys are getting drafted in the first round. They're coming in. They're making some pretty good money. They're not making money like these guys making $40 million a year, but there has to be some kind of in-between. And I just don't understand why teams don't just say, like, this is what I thought Joe Schoen should have did. Just like, hey, man, look, we think you're worth $25 million. If you want to go out there and try to go get that money from another team, go do it. And to me, that was one of the mistakes, was not allowing Joe Schoen to go out there, or Daniel Jones to go test the market. That was a big, big mistake by Joe Schoen, in my opinion. NYC1T in the building says, the dollar amount made the organization more heavily invested in his success. That's a great point right there, and requires a bigger failure to move on. A double-edged sword that you don't have as much with a lesser amount. I mean, this is a great point. And we've been talking today about how, a lot of the conversations that we saw on Hard Knocks are very similar to what we have on some of these Twitter spaces and stuff like that. And that's not to degrade some of the knowledge that some of us have about football, but you would just think it would be more high-level thinking, and they would bring up something like this. Like, that dollar amount, when you gave him the $40 million a year, now, in hindsight, you get a year removed from the deal, Daniel Jones gets hurt, and now it makes it more difficult to move on. Everyone was saying, oh, it's not a 4-year contract, it's a 2-year contract. Now, if Daniel Jones comes out here and plays well this season coming up in 2024, it's absolutely not going to be a 2-year contract. I think it'll put the Giants in a tough decision and lean a little bit towards what 1T is saying here. They're not going to be able to move on, and then we're going to kind of be in this time loop again. It'll be like the end of 2022 all over again, where it was like, oh, this guy played pretty decent. How are we going to just let him go? And I think the same thing could happen this year if Daniel Jones puts up a similar type of season to 2022 with some decent numbers and the Giants win some games. So we'll see how it goes. But damn, that's a great point right there, man. I'm gonna definitely clip that up and possibly use that statement right there for Twitter, because that's a great point right there. It's gonna make it extremely hard for the Giants to move on from Daniel Jones. Chance Chambers says Giants didn't want DJ to get offended like Warriors did with Clay. They paid to keep him happy. Yeah, and I think that's something there too. And you saw, with the Saquon stuff that Joe Schoen kind of mentioned that, like, we don't want to send him an offer that offends him. But at the end of the day, no one else offered Daniel Jones a deal, and the Giants didn't give him an opportunity to do so. And I think that would have been better. Why not allow another team to go out there and attempt to give Daniel Jones a deal, and then you try to match the offer? Adam Costa says, the other thing that made me mad is Pat Mahomes would have been able to function behind that line. Let me see, because I know that's in my notes here. Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. Yeah, we definitely going to talk about that. All right, let's get into the next one, man. Salute to everybody in the building, man. Giants Nation is in the building. I don't even know how there's this many of you on a Monday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, rocking out with your boy Authentic, man. But salute to all of y'all for being in the building, man. It's been a great vibe already. I'm going to keep y'all here for like probably another 15, 20 before we get out of here. And then if y'all got any questions y'all want to ask, man, we'll do a little short Q&A at the end of this one, and then I'll get y'all up out of here. But let's get to this next Giant Overreaction. All right, let's talk about it, man. Adam Costas, he just, man, you got to be like my program director, bro. You know exactly where we going on each and every one of these Giant Overreactions. I think you're just as pissed off about some of this stuff as I am. This one comes from Almighty Zach. He said, and he's quoting Joe Shane on this one, "This is the year for Daniel." He said, "Laughing my ass off. What a fucking idiot." Let me know if y'all think this is an overreaction by putting an O in the chat, or if you agree with this statement on the screen, and you can take the U, or if you need a little bit more time, like me, I'm gonna take the push on this one for sure. You can put a P in the chat. But this is, I know a lot of fans, especially the ones with a short fuse, aren't liking some of the stuff they saw on this Hard Knocks episode 1 that debuted last week on HBO. And I'm with them on it. Like, some of the stuff that was said in that segment, and knowing that you got final edit on this stuff, right? Like, why would you say some of this stuff? And I'm glad that Adam brought up the Patrick Mahomes quote. You know, I'm going to get to that one. But Joe Shane said, let me make sure this is off here. Joe Shane said, "This is the year for Daniel. The plan all along was give him a couple of years. Is he our guy for the next 10 years, or do we need to pivot and find someone else?" Dog, we're going into year 6 of Daniel Jones. He says he didn't have much of a chance this year. Your core guys that were going to play together played less than 60 snaps together. And Brandon Brown's in the room just like, yup. And I don't care what nobody says. Brandon Brown is not a fan of Daniel Jones. I can tell. And then he says, in Miami, we had fucking 3 practice squad guys. You could have fucking Patrick Mahomes behind that line, and he won't win. I'm not giving up on him. And Brandon said, yup, again. He says, you're paying the guy $40 million, and that's not to hand it off to a $12 million running back. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman looked at this and said, we're paying our quarterback $50 million. We'll pay him to hand the ball off to a $12 million running back. No problem. Now, the Patrick Mahomes stuff is just, you talk about a Twitter conversation, right? There are so many people that are using that quote to validate their thoughts on Daniel Jones in the previous season, saying that Patrick Mahomes wouldn't do better here. I've seen hella content creators say that. I've seen so many fans in our fan base say that. I've seen national analysts say that. And being that they had final cut on this, I got to agree with Almighty Zach that, yeah, you are a fucking idiot to keep that statement in the final edit. To me, that was silly. I was hoping that Patrick Mahomes would come out and say something about it. You know how Patrick Mahomes sometimes would throw some stuff out there. I was hoping he would come out and say something about it. We're talking about possibly the GOAT at the quarterback position in the history of the NFL here. Leaning towards that for sure. Some people going to say it's still Tom Brady. Some people going to say Patrick Mahomes is already the GOAT. But they could have just removed that. I thought it was interesting. And the one part about this whole Hard Knocks episode that I did not like from Joe Shane, that to me is a blemish on everything that he is saying. There's zero accountability for the offensive line. I don't know if y'all noticed this, okay? You're screaming Daniel Jones didn't have a chance. Patrick Mahomes couldn't win behind that line. Well, you brought that line in. You were responsible for the lack of depth that was on that offensive line. You banked on youth, okay? You paid Daniel Jones and didn't have the resources to be able to bring in a perennial offensive lineman to help that line. There aren't many offensive lines with a cornerstone left tackle like Andrew Thomas that are having the kind of troubles that the New York Giants are having up front. You are the one that has been drafting poor in the first 2 drafts that you've been here for the Giants. You dealt with the injuries poor within the season. You and your head coach, Brian Daboll, both of y'all struggled to pivot in the proper direction. When you look at things like Adoree Jackson back there returning punts, when you look at Evan Neal on there out there on special teams against the Dallas Cowboys, chasing down a blocked field goal and messing up his hamstring, which was detrimental to him for the entire rest of the season. That's on you. And here you are preaching patience to the fan base with no accountability. You know, if I'm sculpting something and I'm building something, I'm an audio engineer by day. So if I did your mix and the tracking engineer messed up on the mix, okay, but I mixed the record after that, and there are some hurdles I got to get over, and you have complaints when I send you the mix, I got to take some accountability on the mix, even if I didn't track the session. I got to take accountability. So to see Joe Shane sit up here and talk about Patrick Mahomes and talk about how bad this offensive line was and never say it was on me, that to me shows a lack of accountability. Now, I can't go without talking about some good, right? The Bobby Okereke signing, love it. The Dex deal, the Andrew Thomas deal, love it. I've thrown out some scenarios, you know, out there on this channel that, you know, you could have used those guys as some pivotal pieces as trading capital to maybe bring in some more draft picks and truly commit to the rebuild. But I'm not mad at those deals one bit because Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas are top of their position in the league. I love the trade for Isaiah Simmons. You know, only giving up a 7th round pick to bring in a guy like Isaiah Simmons, who is a Swiss Army knife when it comes to the defense. Fantastic. And I think that a lot of that had to do with Wink Martindale. I think Wink really wanted to use Isaiah Simmons a certain way. And we saw Shane Bowen speaking on that as well, talking about how he planned to use Isaiah Simmons first and second down, being in the slot and also being a money backer on third down. And I love that, right? Because a lot of the blitz in Shane Bowen's scheme comes from that nickel corner. So if that's going to be Isaiah Simmons, I love that. That'll give him an opportunity to be able to get after the passer. And I think that that's where he's naturally best at, although he has the capability to be able to cover and do some things that DBs do. I think he's better suited getting after the quarterback. I love the trade for Brian Burns. The money, that's another thing, right? Because we're paying Brian Burns some healthy money. And right now, you could say Brian Burns is not a top 5 edge rusher in the league right now. Hopefully he ascends to be that. He just has one season where he has double-digit sacks, and it came in a contract year. He had 12.5 sacks that year. But I love the signing because you're addressing an issue. We've seen Kayvon Thibodeau go out there, put some good pen to paper, 11.5 sacks last season, and to pair him with Brian Burns, I love the move. But there are a bunch of question marks still on this entire team and this defense. For me, every time we add a weapon, we lose a weapon. So you're bringing in a guy like Malik Neighbors, and everybody is extremely excited. This dates back to Saquon. You brought in Saquon, you traded Odell, right? And now you get rid of guys like Xavier McKinney. You get rid of, Darren Waller ends up retiring, and you allow Saquon Barkley to walk in free agency. Are these guys going to be enough? Is Devin Singletary going to be enough? Can Malik Neighbors unlock Daniel Jones? Because the fan base sure as hell thinks that's going to be the case. They think that a rookie wide receiver is going to come in here and unlock their quarterback. And I don't know if that's the case. I talked about this a little bit earlier too. Spending draft capital on tight end every year. 4th rounder on Daniel Bellinger in 2022. You traded a 3rd round pick for Darren Waller entering 2023. And then now in 2024, you go out there and you spend a 4th rounder on Theo Johnson. Are we going to address tight end again next year? Because it's clearly a problem right now. And that they don't have faith in Daniel Bellinger is worrisome to me. A guy who I thought, had some productivity in 2022, looked like he was ascending, and they kind of just took the legs out from underneath the table on him. All in with Daniel Jones is the scariest shit as a Giants fan who thinks the way that I do. It's just, we've seen Daniel Jones, and I know a lot of people think that he needs a wide receiver 1 to be able to assess who he is. I think that Daniel Jones' best football is probably in front of him if you can put some pieces around him. But that's not to say that we can't assess him in his previous seasons. When we saw Lamar Jackson out there with Hollywood Brown as his number 1 wide receiver and Mark Andrews out there, did we have trouble assessing who he was as a quarterback? when we saw Baker Mayfield in his first couple of seasons with not as much talent around him, I'm not sitting here comparing it to the New York Giants situation. And then when they put all that talent around him, brought in Landry, Odell Beckham, drafted tight end, and it still didn't work out with one of the best offensive lines in the league at the time. I think we still knew who Baker Mayfield was. Baker Mayfield was an average quarterback in the league. He could win you some games, obviously. But when it comes to elite characteristics, he don't got those. When we saw Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville, did we have trouble assessing who he was? Like, to me, the Gardner Minshew thing was one of the most puzzling situations from the quarterback position I've seen in my recent history. Like, he was playing well. His touchdown to interception ratio was like 3-1, definitely 2-1. I want to say it was pushing 3-1. And then they benched him, and I'm having trouble remembering who the running back was. We signed him for a little while, James Robinson. It was like Urban Meyer got there and just put them in the doghouse and was like, I don't care what y'all did previous to me getting here. The future is not y'all. Drafted Trevor Lawrence, and Gardner Minshew was the odd man out. But go today and just go look at Gardner Minshew's stats. As of today, he's a much better quarterback than Daniel Jones, but nobody's about to pay him $40 million, right? And the other thing that Joe Shane said, and shout out to my homie Jabri for bringing this up to me, BBU Giants, I believe it is, on Twitter. Passionate fan. I love Jabri. He's funny as hell. But he brought up the comment that Joe Shane brought up when he said, somebody had asked Joe Shane, like, why are y'all scouting all these quarterbacks if y'all aren't drafting them pretty much? And Joe Shane said, we're scouting them and it's great for us because we're going to have tape on them down the line. When those guys become free agents and, maybe we still have a decision to make at the quarterback position, I am paraphrasing here, that we know exactly who that player is. And, I spoke to guys like Hendon Hooker, I guess guys like Michael Penix, C.J. Stroud. I think he even mentioned C.J. Stroud. You think these guys are going to be free agents? Are you really thinking that in your mind? These are just comments from the GM that make me just go, wow, I'm just so puzzled. And they're such head scratchers to me. And to think that you were a professional at this and you watched what happened with Dave Gettleman. You've watched what happened with the previous coaches. You could say what you want about Jason Garrett, Joe Judge, Pat Shurmur. You could say what you want about those guys, Ben McAdoo and all that. But we've seen jobs get lost because of the play at the quarterback position. And Joe Shane and Brian Dable, who was not seen much on that Hard Knocks episode, the first episode, both of them seem to be doubling down on Daniel Jones. And I can't wait to just see more from Brian Dable because I'm a person that reads body language. Like I always tell my homies, man, my judgment of character is on 1,000. Like if you a snake or if you don't believe in what you're saying or you don't believe in what the general manager is saying, I feel like I got a good eye to be able to just read the room, check the body language. That's why I say that Brandon Brown is not invested in Daniel Jones. And I also think that Brown wanted to bring back Saquon. He wasn't pressed to do it, but I think that he would have preferred to do it. And I just want to see more out of Brian Dable on episode 2 tomorrow night. I really do. And just, I feel like tomorrow night's episode is going to be one of the better ones. I saw Art Stapleton came out and he said he got to see a preview of the episode, an early screening of it. And he said they're going to be talking about the draft. Peter Schrager was on the Hard Knocks podcast talking about it as well. And he said the deep dive into the psyche of the players and scouting the players that we're going to get on episode 2 is going to be something that we've never seen on Hard Knocks before. And I do think that this is a really great opportunity for Giants fans because a lot of people are skeptical about this Hard Knocks version coming out, the offseason and what it was going to be, if it was going to be all fluff and whatnot moving forward. And this is the first time we're getting to see an offseason version. I think this is fantastic. Being able to see some of the thinking and some of the psyche that the coaches have, that the front office has, even some of the people that are in the front office that don't have as higher up of a position, just seeing that these conversations are being had, this is being a fly on the wall or as close as we can get to it as fans. And I love it. It's great. But as far as this one here, I think that it was an idiotic move to say the Patrick Mahomes thing. And then this is the year for Daniel is crazy. It's absolutely crazy to me. But we'll see, man. This is why they play the games, and I can come up here and give you predictions and give you my assessment as much as I want. And when they play the games, we're really going to find out what's good. And all I can do at that point is either say, I told you so, or I was completely wrong. But we'll see how it goes. I'm definitely looking forward to tomorrow's episode. I'm going to probably rewatch episode 1 just to catch up again and just, refresh, all the thoughts on that episode. I actually recorded it to my hard drive and whatnot, so I'm going to just watch it here one more time and get myself ready for tomorrow night. And I told everyone I talk ball with, I told them, I said, this Hard Knock stuff is going to be great because, one, HBO knows how to tell stories. They've been doing this for so long, over a decade they've been doing these Hard Knocks, and they're great storytellers. And just getting this kind of documentary footage on our team, it's amazing. This is what NFL Films is made of, to be honest. And I encourage y'all, like, there's a lot. I ain't trying to let the cat out the bag too much because I'm going to be using a lot of older NFL Films footage for the Giants documentary. But on YouTube, there's a ton of old footage from NFL Films that is just like behind the scenes and gives you a great look into the New York Giants organization. One of them that I would say to look at is the 1976, I believe it was, the 1976 draft. And it was a point in time where teams pivoted to drafting more players from small schools. So you were seeing like small school guys get drafted in the first round. And it was also a draft where the general consensus around the league became that, you could draft African-American players. And it was just a great NFL Films episode. All the Treasures episodes that NFL Films does are fantastic. So I definitely encourage all of y'all to definitely go out there and definitely check those out. So let's keep it moving here while we wrap this up, man. Big shout out to all of y'all, man, for pulling up and rocking out with me today, man. This was a good vibe, man. And I'll be going live every Monday from now until the season. And also I'll be on Bleacher Report in the middle of the month. I believe I got a Bleacher Report stream on the 11th. We'll be talking about entering training camp and some of the ideas and some of the philosophies we talked about here today. I did see a couple of questions. Let me see if I still got it queued up. Let me scroll back. Yeah, that jumped up. Athens is in the building one time, says, I was in Miami and have on my phone a play where Jones panicked, threw the screen ball at a fallen wide receiver laying on the ground while Waller was 3 feet right and had blockers on his side. Tyrod moved better. Yup, I'm right there with you on that. That's definitely facts. This is the one I wanted to get to from Adam as well. What is your pro personnel guy doing? If that is your mindset, we will revisit these quarterbacks in 4 years. Joe may not last that long. Yeah, you talking about, what's my man's name? Tim McDonald. Yeah, it's interesting, man. Just like there is a bit of we're kind of lost in that front office from what we saw, but you got to consider that you're only getting a little bit of a glimpse into what they wanted you to see, and I think you can go negative or positive with that. Like it was some of that stuff, like I talked about with the Patrick Mahomes comment. That to me, if I'm on the media department for the New York Giants, I suggest removing that. I would have removed that. That wouldn't have been in the episode. The Daniel Jones stuff, I think that Joe Shane has also doubled down and spoken, about his belief in Daniel Jones and, investment in Daniel Jones. I don't think they needed to do that for that episode, and I don't understand why they did it. I really don't. But maybe it'll connect and make some more sense on this second episode. I cannot wait to get the full body of work of Hard Knocks, all 5 episodes, and then I'm going to just go back after that 5th episode airs, and I'm going to binge the whole thing again. Like, just a great way to have the season kind of fly by and, kind of kill some time while we approach the preseason, the regular season, and all that stuff. It's going to be great, man. I'm definitely looking forward to it. But for those of y'all that missed the beginning of the episode, Hard Knocks will be coming on tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't let HBO throw a fork in the road like they did on this last one where their guide was saying it was at 10 p.m. when in fact it did air at 9 p.m. I'm sure that they lost a lot of ratings because of that. That's a rookie mistake that they should not have done. Hopefully they correct that this go round. And then training camp, don't forget training camp starts July 24th. It's going to go all the way up to August 6th. There won't be training camp on Saturday on the 27th of July and also the 31st of July. There won't be no training camp as well. Every other day there'll be a training camp beginning at 10 a.m. So make sure y'all get the release of those tickets. Season ticket holders tomorrow at 2 p.m. For everyone else that's going to be general admission, they'll be released on Thursday, I believe it is, at 2 p.m. as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Giants.com/training camp is where you can get all the information on that as well. And those practices are going to be free. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Also, again, go check out that episode with Talking Giants. It's their latest video they released. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. That's got, I'd say the best of the best as far as content creation goes in the New York Giants community. All of us on there for about 15 minutes. Me, Sal, and Monty from Talking Giants. Diggy. They didn't have Big Dash on there. They should have had Big Dash on there. I don't think they had Big Dash on there. They had Kid Blue, a few others on there, man. So definitely make sure y'all go check that out. And I will be here next Monday and every Monday following. Y'all know what it is, man. Committed to this New York Giants content. And if you was digging the vibes today, make sure to hit the subscribe button, man. We're going to be dropping content religiously throughout the season, 4 days a week. Also going to be doing the in-season documentary. We got a lot on the docket, man, for this season. No matter what happens with New York Giants football, we're going to make the season fun. Don't forget about all the trivia giveaways. Shout out to Over the Years Sports, who sponsors all the giveaways that we do during the season on Thursdays when we do our trivia night as well. So, yeah, tap in, man. We're an honest community over here. And, man, we call it like we see it. And if we're ever wrong, y'all know we're going to own it up and eat crow. That's how we do over here. But, again, salute to all of y'all in the building for rocking out with us today, man. Couldn't do this without y'all, man. This content stuff has become, one of my passions and one of my loves. So, yeah, man, y'all know what it is. Enjoy the rest of y'all Monday afternoon. We end every show the same exact way, man. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. Y'all know what it is, man. I'll catch y'all on the next episode of the Giant Overreaction. Y'all be good, man. Peace.